Cheers to
They
Dan.
open this way, Kim.
Best DM I've
They
ever
open
had.
towards
Hey everyone, welcome back to Progressive D&D. Today I'm super excited to share with you the journey of building my custom Dungeons & Dragons game table. This was a labor of love designed, built specifically for my amazing players. So, let's dive right in. First up, let's talk about the foundation of our epic game table, the base. For the base, I started with a modified 6-foot round table. I needed to cut it down to the dimensions that would be best to suit our needs. This involved some precise measurements and a bit of heavy lifting, but it set the stage for everything else to come.
So during this part of the design, the table really led me to the layout. I had plans within my head of the angles I wanted the table. I knew I wanted it wider at the DM side and to be narrower for the single player position. But really I was kind of confined to what the table supports would allow. Before I started cutting these pieces, you'll see here in just a second that that one support that we have on each side, I actually undid those and repositioned them at the most severe angle I could, while still not affecting the rigidity of the table.
Now let's talk about the tabletop cover. The cover was essential to keep things looking clean. I chose a material that was both durable and easy on the eyes, cutting it to fit perfectly over the custom base.
Here I am using the right tool for the right job. Using that jigsaw made it a lot easier to cut out the opening for the virtual tabletop monitor. Here I had the opportunity to make the top of the cover match the same color and the fabric as the rest of the table.
Securing the player areas to the base was a crucial next step. To ensure stability, I used L-channel brackets secured with lag bolts. Additionally, I added bolts through the back of the player areas, giving an extra layer of support. This setup guarantees that everything stays firmly in place, no matter how intense the game gets.
So the supports I mentioned earlier that I relocated, that is what these lag bolts are going into. They're not just going through the tabletop, but they're actually going into a support structure underneath. This L channel was really a true kind of saving grace. I was not 100% sure how I was going to hang the play structure. Where the two long sides, I was able to use those lag bolts. On the short end, I didn't have the support underneath to do a lag bolt. So these are actually bolts with nuts on the other side.
Now, let's move on to one of the coolest features, the flip desktop play area. These sections were designed to give each player their own space. They're foldable, making them versatile and easy to store things in. Crafting these involved careful woodworking to ensure they were sturdy yet flexible. The final result? Personalized play zones for each player.
My first goal was to try to determine what would work best for me to be able to replicate the same design, same cuts for these player areas. My decision was to make a template using my laser and to basically cut out a template that I could draw the cut lines out on. I think one of my learnings is this could really be refined. For one, I think it's too wide. And what I found was with each one of these, as long as I kept the pairings correct, meaning the side to side and the tops and bottoms for one piece, it worked okay. And I really put a lot of effort into keeping these separated so that I could distinguish which set goes with which set. But what I found later on was if I wanted to switch out a top with another bottom, it didn't quite match up the way I had hoped it would. So I think in the future what I probably need to do is create a actual jig to use with my table saw so that it would be a duplicate cut each time I do it. For anyone who's watched a video prior to this of me working on some of these prototype player sections, I hope you will appreciate that I have installed some safety devices on my table saw. Please remember I am an amateur, and always just be very careful using any kind of power tools like this. For anyone wondering what kind of wood I'm using, this is just simple pine. On this first go at making this table, I wasn't going to overdo it and use any really expensive hardwood. But the good thing about pine is it tends to stain very well. So I was happy about that and how it turned out. This is another perfect example here of where some kind of a jig set up with these angles on it would make a lot cleaner cuts, and I would be able to replicate the same thing repeatedly. And that ultimately is going to be my goal if I make another table. For this part, I am just ripping out the tops and bottoms of the play section. Measure twice, cut once. So this was the personalization piece. Using my laser, this is the one tool that I will say that I'm spoiled on, and this is my favorite tool that I have. I use this more than probably anything else. I have 3D printers and I use this laser more than anything, just because I love it. But it really enables me to give it that personal touch. And my goal was, I have players who have been playing with me for the past 6 or 7 years since I started playing again. I kind of call them my OG players. And I just wanted to give each of them their props and kind of memorialize them. They are responsible for my dream of being a DM, playing D&D, and just getting to keep playing it. So I really appreciate everything they've done for me, so I thought I would honor them each. As I mentioned earlier, pine stains really well. What do you guys think of the color? Would you have used a different color? I decided to go with this darker walnut. It's a dark walnut stain, and just because it's going to go really well with that kind of royal red fabric I'm using for the upholstering of the table. This is what I went through to create this table. Honestly, it kept it cool for me. All right, back to work. So before I start putting together the player areas, I wanted to actually get the fabric laid down on the play side. I just used some kind of high quality adhesive, put it down, and you can kind of see here I'm using some clamps to press it down. And after pressing it down and letting it dry, cut it out, and you can kind of see what it looks like. Pretty good, huh? So time to assemble some player sections. As I mentioned, I did a pretty good job of keeping these separated and keeping these pairings together. What did I learn here? Probably a couple of learnings I had is I would make these player sections a little bit shorter. These are about 5 inches thick when they're closed, so I would probably make them narrower. I think at the end, when everything is actually put together, it would actually probably help the players a little bit. But one of the things I was trying to do is make it to where more things could fit into those cubbies for storage purposes. The other thing I learned is I was thinking that these brads would be enough to hold it. I quickly learned that the brads were not enough. So I would say I would use those brads again just to assemble it. But as I end up doing here towards the end, I'm actually end up screwing that tops and bottoms to the sides. The other piece of learning that I've used, and something I'll probably end up going and replacing, are these hinges. These hinges work well, they look good, but at the end of the day, I don't think they're strong enough, and they're probably not going to hold up to a lot of wear and tear. So I'm going to be on the lookout for sturdier hinges. You'll actually see when I start to put them together a little bit later here in the video, what exactly I mean by these hinges aren't the best. So if you're going to do this, make sure and get some good sturdy hinges. There they are.
I placed a video monitor in the center of the table to facilitate our virtual tabletop sessions. This setup allows for interactive play both in person and online. The monitor placement was carefully planned to ensure visibility and functionality for everyone at the table.
So this is my next learning for you all. This was my first monitor. I broke it. I had a second monitor. I broke it. So a future video is going to be me putting in a new monitor and top mounting it. It looks great here. I really love the way it looked, but the bottom mounting just doesn't seem to be holding up. Here we are putting together the play areas. What I decided to do is I wanted to fix each side as one unit. So I'm putting one solid backing across all three of these. Let me know if any of you can see a little issue I had putting this one together. Oh, did you guys see that? Yeah, like I said, this hinges didn't hold up great. So anyone see what stands out to them right here? Give you a second. Leave it in the comment if you can tell me what I did wrong right here. you guessed that I put that back panel on backwards, you are absolutely correct. That unstained piece should be on the back for the railing piece I'm going to put back there that will hold onto the L bracket. So yeah, I ended up having to bring in the stain and do a little touch up there. So as you can see, those tacks I don't trust. They work great for just assembling it, but for permanent use, I decided to go ahead and use some wood screws and screw the bottoms into the side brackets. At the end of the day, I did the same thing on the top as well. On the top side, I had to do a little bit of extra work just to clean it up and make it look better. Here, since that's the bottom, I didn't have to worry too much about the appearance. So let's take a little bit of time here and fix these hinges. I went ahead and added some glue. Went ahead and took off all the hinges off that one, and went ahead and added some glue. Put the hinges back in, and just to see, I think that's gonna give it some support until I can actually replace them. But as the glue dries, that's just gonna make it a little bit extra sturdy. I did end up going through all the hinges and just unscrewing the screws a little bit and then putting them on with some glue. Here I'm adding that back rail that I was mentioning earlier. Now, what I didn't show you all is I actually took that back rail piece, took it to the table saw, took about an 1/8 inch, about halfway up the rail. So there's like an 1/8 inch groove going down the entire rail, which is designed to slip right over that L channel bracket. And here we go, you're going to see me putting it on for the first time. There you go. What do you guys think? So this is kind of this was my first look at seeing did my idea work. What I noticed right off the top was that it was not going down flush. And you'll see here in a minute when I put this one on what I mean. Wow, doesn't that look cool? Really starting to get an idea of what this table is going to look like here. What you'll notice after I put it on, kind of see it has that flex to it, how it flexed downwards. Way too much flex here. It was at this point that I decided I was going to put another bolt from the back of each player section into the bottom support rail. That really helped solidify it and give it a lot more rigidity to it. I did add, and you might see that little hole there in the back of this one. I did one of the features that I wanted to add and haven't quite decided how I'm going to do it for all of them because it was kind of a little difficult to add. But on this specific one, I did add an actual outlet with USB ports on it. So that was a nice feature for that. So now it was time to design the Dungeon Master section. My original thought was to keep it simple. I'm definitely the type who probably thinks about my players more than I think about myself. So at one point I was actually thinking I didn't need any extra space for me as a Dungeon Master. But then one of the things I always consider is Dungeon Masters are players too, So you know what? We need a nice place to play. So I decided to go ahead and go with my original thought, my original plan, and add these wings to it. There you go. That's a nice little piece. Kind of see that was my design for it. But what I found out in reality is there wasn't enough room. I played with it as much as I could. For what it took to create it, I didn't think it was worth the time. So, you know what? Either do it right or don't do it at all. So I decided, let's do it right. Interesting tidbit on these longer wings actually ended up being as kind of an accident. I was just cutting out the longer pieces to actually be able to cut out the smaller pieces, and after I cut out one of the longer sides, I said, hey, I like that. For this DM section, I actually ended up doing kind of a laminate. It's actually 3 layers of laminate, which allowed me to make it the same thickness as the table with the cover. Decided to clean it up a little bit with my little router here, giving it a little rolled edge, just to keep it looking a little bit more professional. And that's a stretch, I realize, because I'm very amateur. But that being said, I really like the way this ended up looking. Here in this video, you can kind of see the 3 layers of the laminate there. So once I got this all looking the way I wanted it to, well, it was time to cover it as well. Doing the upholstery was pretty easy. The main thing you had to keep in mind is you wanted to stretch out the fabric as best you could, because you didn't want those creases. It did have those hems. I could have obviously taken it and probably ironed out the creases in it. But truth be told, I'm a little bit lazy. And the other thing I figured was once I glue it down, like you can kind of see me doing here, I was able to kind of pull it tighter, and also I was able to avoid that a little bit. All right, so here I am, kind of putting it down. The main thing I wanted to do was get it wrapped around, had it glued all the way around, and then also press it down with something pretty heavy. And it just so happens I have a couple of old rail irons that I found, and those things are very heavy, so I figured that'd be a great thing to keep it pressed down. So after all that and it dried, there you go. That's what it looked like. I ended up putting a piece underneath the 2 seams and tightened them up.
Next up, adding a practical feature, a little ledge all the way around the play area. The thin ledge serves as a convenient place for dice, pencils, and other small items. This was a simple addition, but it adds a lot of functionality to the table.
Again, showing you my excellent amateur skill set there. Yeah, those probably There's probably actually a math equation I could have used to get those angles exactly right there down at the end and mitered them. But at the end of the day, I just kind of eyeballed it and made it look good. Um, any professional woodworkers out there, yeah, you probably don't want to watch too much of this. Or give me some great feedback on anything I could do to improve this. I'm sure there are a lot of things I could have done way easier.
To enhance the table's appearance, I added a decorative trim piece. This not only looks great, but also ties the whole design together. It's the little details like this that make the table truly special.
All right, well, I'll be honest, a little behind the scenes here. Um, my original thought was not to add this kind of frilly piece to it. My wife said, no, I really need to. It's gonna make it look a lot better. And she was absolutely right. This really did add a finishing touch to it. And I'm really glad I ended up doing that. And you know what? There's a little piece right there at the end that's just would not take some stain. So hey, a little black Sharpie marker will take care of that. All right, the last piece that you're gonna see here that I really honestly thought I would not be doing is a kind of a modified DM screen. I really honestly work a lot without a DM screen, kind of out in the open. But one of the things I do want to be able to do is I'm using a virtual tabletop and I need my own screen. So I do need something to hide some of that. So unlike some of my other DM screens I've created, which are kind of full size, full height, I decided to make something that looks like it belongs with this table. So in my mind's eye, what I wanted to do, this one I did not plan, I just kind of shot from the hip on this, is I decided I was going to actually create one and putting in this groove so I can actually use some 3D slats that I'm about to cut out with my laser that you'll see here in just a minute to create a nice little screen, multi-layered screen. The other thing I did add also is I added a groove so that I can actually use it as my initiative counter. I have some custom made pieces for each one of my players and for the bad guys and initiative 20 so that I can actually drop those in and everybody can see whose next turn it is in initiative order. So it's back to Lightburn we go, designing some, I say designing, creating some squares. The squares are just gonna be multiple squares so that I can cut out and create a almost fence-like section. Part of it will be lower, part of it will be higher. And pretty straightforward. Just now we're just gonna cut these out with my laser. But do want to make a point that I know a lot of people will say that, hey, he's got a lot of tools to do all this with. I have invested in some tools, but I will say, other than this laser, which is my personal favorite toy, all the tools I have that you've seen me using are either borrowed or they're honestly the cheapest tools you can get online. For an amateur, they worked great. You can see I put those slats in between the two pieces, and now it's time to put the fabric on it, or at least I was getting an idea there if that fabric would fit. But before I do any fabric work, time to make this look just as nice as the table pieces. So upholstering this, once again, is very similar to the other pieces that you've seen me upholstering. Just a matter of making sure that I can get it nice and tight, and then just using some nice 3M adhesive to put it all down. And you always want to kind of clamp one end so that you can pull it taut and make it as tight as possible. This was kind of some odd shapes, so once I got it down tight, kind of needed to go through and just kind of fit it into the grooves and just make sure it laid as flat as possible on the flat sections. After it dried, here I am just cutting out the excess pieces. A really sharp X-Acto knife works wonders here. If you don't have one, it creates all kinds of snags. So I would honestly recommend, if you're doing something like this, replace that blade a few times, because the sharper, the better. And just for some final glue up pieces, laying down a couple of pieces that were the final flap pieces. And there you go. That is the new DM screen for my table.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Before the big reveal though, thank you for the response that you've all made to the pictures I've put out on Facebook in the various groups. Your comments have been overwhelmingly positive and complimentary, and I just appreciate them so much. I hope you enjoyed this build. I hope this inspires some of you to build your own table. There will be future videos as I enhance this and put some of these learnings that I mentioned throughout the video into place. So, till next time, here's the table.
my god. Good lord. This is gonna send me to room.
Katie's gonna pass out.
Katie's gonna pass out just because it's cool. I'm like, I can explain.
Okay, so why did I get the short chair?
I mean, girl, like to be completely as the shortest person in this room.
I think I'm technically short.
100%. If you guys need to move around and sit in different places,
No, this is my
sit.
spot.
By the way, cheers to Dan.
They open this way. Kim.
Best DM I've
They
ever
open
had.
towards you this way.